Hey, everybody, I'm Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storytellers, and today is going to be a fantastic day. We are broadcasting with our partner today from Belfast, Ireland, which is just fantastic because we're going to be talking about the joys, trauma, and excitement of creating what we hope will be a universal standard around innovation. Is it possible? Do people buy into it? Will it apply to me? Will it apply to the broadest spectrum of folks, even within corporations or on the outside of corporations? Let's talk about getting some standards around innovation. And that's why I'm really excited to have my guest with me today, Charlie Tuxworth, who is the founder and director of Celsio. Charlie helps companies to set a clear direction for innovation and then develops their capability and confidence to actually deliver it. Who among us does not want that? In 2013, Charlie took on the innovation brief in a UK financial services company before breaking out to create Celsio and developing software and services that drive innovation in established businesses today. He also writes international standards for innovation and is the co-founder of Innovate Island, an all-Ireland collaborative network of innovation partners, students, and advocates, truly bringing innovation and its concepts to everyone in Ireland. So, Charlie, thank you so much for joining me today. I love having this international perspective. And to clarify, I'm seated in New York, you're seated in Belfast, and we are doing this literally across the pond. So let's dive into a conversation about how you actually got to this place of getting started in this, in beginning to think of this idea around international standardization around innovation. So you worked in a big financial services company, not unfamiliar with hiring consultants to solve their innovation challenges. What was that like?
It was great fun. I mean, it was a great opportunity for my background was in actually running the software delivery team for many years before that. And then, as you said, in 2013, I was given the innovation brief, which was just make us more innovative. That was all I was told.
How many of us have gotten that brief before? Make us more innovative. Hey, boss, what does that mean? Exactly. Make it more innovative. That's what I said.
And it was a case of, we must have asked 10, 15 people what they meant when they said make us more innovative, and we got at least 25 or 30 different answers from those people.
So that's helpful.
So we started to do what a lot of people do, and we played around with generating ideation to try and solve a few of the problems, few of the challenges that we were facing. Generally, we found that we'd never had time. Nobody ever had time to stop and think and help on the innovation brief. If some of you may have heard of the Winnie the Pooh books. We had the quote from that always kept coming to mind was there's a lovely phrase or clause in it where Winnie the Pooh is being led down the stairs by Christopher Robin, and his head is bumping down the stairs. And Winnie the Pooh just knows that there has to be a better way of going down the stairs. If only he could just stop and think of that other way. And that's what we were doing in the innovation brief, was trying to find time to stop bumping our heads as we went down the stairs, to think of other ways of doing things. So we did a fair amount of that. We played around with new technology. We challenged the status quo. We asked the stupid questions. And quite often we were rolled in as a troubleshooter when particularly difficult problems were facing the organization. And we had one particular challenge, which was a very expensive challenge for the IT firm or the financial services firm. And we were briefed to bring in innovation consultants, the best that we could find. So what we did was we had a look out there to see who were the best people who were based in the US. So we flew over the head of this innovation consultancy to come in and do a pitch for us. Really, really impressive. One of the slickest pitches I've ever seen or ever experienced. And they were going to parachute in their team of experts, a small team of experts, 2 or 3 people, for I think it was 3 or 4 months, for an extremely large amount of money. I'm not going to say how much it was, but it was an
How many zeros, Charlie? How many zeros? How many zeros?
Oh, it was only 5 zeros. So but it was a big number. It was a
Mm,
5-digit number.
okay.
So yeah, it was a big number. And they were really impressive. The executive team got really impressed by them and said, yep, we've got to bring these people in. And me being me, sort of put my hand up and said, oh, hold on a minute. I said, definitely, these people are definitely going to come in with new perspectives. They're bringing a diverse way of thinking into what we're doing. They will definitely have ideas that we haven't thought of before. And that's great. You know, it's really useful. And we may be able to solve the problem off the back of that. But the challenge for us as the innovation team was that they would do their final presentation on a Friday with a few ideas that we could then sort of take away and try out and prototype and take a little bit further. But on Monday, they would have gone back to the States. We would then hit another challenge in the business and we go, well, what do we do? The executive team would be looking straight at us going, well, you're the innovation team, you fix it. And we realized that we were going to learn nothing from this. They were going to parachute in, as I say, they were going to come up with some ideas, a bit like Miles Finch in the film Elf, you know, when the guy sort of pops in with his little black book of ideas for writing a book that they have never seen before, and then disappear, and we will be left to it. So me being me sort of said, no, hold on a minute. I think there must be a better way of doing this. There's got to be a better way of going bump, bump, bump down the stairs. So we started to explore innovation and we looked for different approaches to a purely consultancy route, if you like.
You know, I worked in nonprofit and I worked fighting HIV infection and the spread of AIDS back in the 90s. And we would get experts coming in from UN AIDS, from the World Health Organization, from all different organizations to my little outpost in northern Thailand, right on the Burmese border. And we used to refer to those individuals as seagulls. They would fly in, they would poop their data all over our desks, and then they would fly away with no understanding of the context or the content or what we were dealing with or the tiny resources that we had to bring to the solution set. And that's how we referred to them, as like, here comes another seagull. He's got another load for us. How exciting. But you're right. The other side of that is, where's the learning? Where's the skill development? Where is the, okay, next time we come to this juncture, what do we do now?
Yes,
and so
exactly.
that's really how Celsio was born, right?
It is. That sort of the whole approach really shaped what it was that we wanted to do as a business. So myself and my business partner, we were both from a technology background. We knew that we must be able to automate stuff in order to support innovation once we knew what it was that we needed to support. So we wanted to spend time trying to work out how to ideate better, how to generate better ideas, different approaches, so that it wasn't design thinking is the answer. Now, what was the question again? So we looked at collaborative techniques using 400 or 500 different people working together. We looked at creativity techniques. And we had a lot of success from that. We got some really good innovations, some incremental. So some were just sort of process improvement type stuff. Some were quite evolutionary, if you like. We didn't invent anything. We certainly weren't in the market of R&D and invention, but we were incredibly innovative in terms of what we did. So we brought sort of new things in. And then every time we took those ideas back to the business, we had to justify ourselves. We had to justify the innovation program. We had to explain and remind why we were there, why we were trying to interfere and change the way that they operated. So again, we thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. So we looked at what was missing. You know, the ideation was great. We managed to get through ideas through to commercialization, but every time we tried to do another one, we were back to square one, having to explain everything to the new team. So we thought there is definitely something missing here. And we really narrowed it down to two areas. Firstly, we thought that there was a real need for strategic alignment. So for the innovation program to have its own strategy, the same way that we would for finance, for HR, for IT, for sales, and so on, so that it knew what it needed to do in its own right. And that strategy had to be 100% aligned and supportive of the business and where the business was trying to get to, its objectives and its goals as well. So
wait, stop there for just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Don't you need, like, if you're saying, okay, we're going to align the HR strategy, the CFO strategy, our revenue goals, our sales team for the year, our product roadmap, et cetera, all of that stems from the CEO, right? I mean, you need to get buy-in at the CEO level to say the innovation strategy has just as much a seat at the table as all of the other strategies. And in fact, since it is, if we're making a 2025 master plan or even a 2030 plan, there's no way that innovation can't be seated at the right hand of the father, right? Or the mother, hopefully one day. But that in its own right is a challenge. I mean, frankly speaking, I started this podcast because it always felt to me, and it has been confirmed for me from so many guests, that the chief innovation officer oftentimes gets the shortest shrift at the boardroom table, because we're always in the process of failing. We're always experimenting. We don't know if the thing that we're working on is actually going to work. And hopefully it brings some fruit to bear. But normally by the time it gets there, someone else is taking credit for it. Sometimes it's the guy at the top. And so the chief innovation officer just goes like, great, what do you do again? Oh, you're in the middle of failing on the next thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So like, this is the Innovation Storyteller Show. What's the story that the chief innovation officer, the guy or the woman who has innovation in their title, what's that conversation like, Charlie, when you have to go to the CEO and say, innovation needs to be one of the 5 incremental strategies of this company, period?
One of the first things that we would do when we meet with a new client, when we're talking to a new client, we generally, we're not talking to the CEO. We're talking to somebody that has innovation in their job title, as you suggested.
And is struggling, right? And like has a need.
Yeah, definitely are. And one of the first questions we will ask in that initial conversation over a cup of coffee is, what does the chief exec think of this? What is the CEO's view on innovation? And if they're behind it, which is a rarity, but if they're 100% behind it, then that's absolutely fantastic. They see the value, they understand it, they understand the risks. That doesn't happen very often. So quite often, one of the very, very early things we would need to do is to meet with the executive team. And we go in, we do an educational piece to the board and say, this is what innovation actually is. This is how we would define it. This is how it is defined internationally, if you like. We would have done this with their innovation sponsor, with their innovation lead. So we're getting the message across, that which is perfectly aligned to their language, their constraints, their appetite for risk, their appetite for change. But there is definitely.
Does that mean, as a storyteller, that you modify the conversation for the CEO and the company's lexicon, and you use all of their language, and you really begin to tell the stories of their innovation culture?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to, because it has to be relevant to them. They have to be able to click. It has to click in their mind and go, all right, yes, I see what you're doing. And quite often, as part of that discussion, we would have agreed with the innovation sponsor. We would have extracted some stories from them, if you like, because what we need to be able to do is say, do you remember when 3 years ago, when you switched to digital onboarding for your new clients, you moved from that paper-based system to allowing people to use biometrics on their phone to register as a new user? Yeah, we remember that. That was innovation. Do you remember when you did such and such and such and such, and you reduced your throughput, your cost of throughput by 30%? That was through innovation. So we tell them their own stories. We're certainly not trying to take credit for having influenced those, because they were way before our time. Right. But we're trying to get them to realize that innovation is what they do already in a lot of circumstances. And that's what we're trying to do more of. We're not trying to invent anything. We're not trying to set up an R&D team or an innovation lab with bean bags and table tennis tables or whatever. That's not what this is about. This is making innovation theater. Yeah, exactly. All innovation theater. This is about making innovation part and parcel of what the organization does and how they think.
I love this technique. So as a storyteller, this technique that you're referring to is how you describe back to the boss what you've already done, is called breadcrumbing. So the way that we position someone when we want them to change is we actually make them look backwards. And we give them, just like a little kid, remember that test you got an A on 3 weeks ago? You can do it again. And you say to the CEO, do you remember that project that we did like about 6 years ago that worked out really well and wound up generating X amount of ROI, and we wound up expanding into Asia as a result? And then when we found all the learnings from that, we capitalized on it and we applied it to our next project, which was XYZ. So that's called breadcrumbing. And you wind up talking about the innovations and the investments that you've made, right? That wasn't free. that actually cost us something, but here's what we got out. And then it led to the next thing. And then you say to the boss, this is just the next right step.
Yeah.
This is not a big leap. This is not disruption. This is not a massive shift I'm asking you to make. I'm asking you to take the next right step, like the last 10 you've made that were so brilliant. See, boss, it's easy.
Yeah, it is. And the uncertainty needs to be added into that as well, because that's the first question we get back. You say, yeah, but it doesn't always work, does it? Well, no, it doesn't. If everything that you do under the innovation banner works first time, then you're not being risky enough. You're not trying to change anything. You're just working harder.
Right.
I did some work with a global bank a few years ago, and we got a tour of their new innovation lab. Shiny new innovation lab, absolutely fantastic. I say new, it had been open about six or 9 months, and we had a look around, and the place was empty. Sorry, this is a slight digression, but the place was completely empty because it was that special place for innovation. So nobody used it because they didn't quite know how to go about it. But the question I asked them when they were in there, I said, how many of the ideas coming out of this lab or under the innovation banner actually make it through to implementation? And the chief innovation officer said about 90%. I went, right, I say, so you're not taking many chances then. You're not trying anything that's too risky. Said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you were taking a few risks, that might be 40% or 30%, but you'd be expecting that level of churn, if you like, the stuff that just not working, to pick out the good ideas. And if your success rate is that high, then all you're doing is picking out the stuff that you know is probably going to work, which is probably the stuff you were going to do anyway. You're
iterating, you're not innovating.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I mean, to be fair, iteration is an important process as well.
Sure.
And it falls under the innovation banner from my perspective. Incrementally getting better is so important, and we need to do it. And we can do that by bringing in new ideas, new thinking, new technologies. But it's important to stretch ourselves as well and try and do that a little bit more.
So, and so let's talk about standards a little bit, because like this whole concept might feel foreign to, the great artists of innovation or the great data scientists around innovation, right? Who only want to look at the numbers. We have some folks who are like, I live in the moonshot. I'm a rebel. I'm a punk. Like, let's go break down the walls. Let's go do it. But Charlie, you have a background in ISO, right? You have a background in standards already. Can you tell us how you made this jump from ISO and those kinds of very fundamental standards in industry to making this transition, the breadcrumbs, if you will, that got you to innovation standard making?
Yeah, so I had, as you say, I mean, my background was software engineering, so we did everything against standards. So we had the ISO, so International Standards Organization. We used their standards for quality, for environmental impact, for information security. So everything we did was very rigorously put in place. So when my nature, I suppose, my natural inclination when we looked at innovation and we tried to make it repeatable was, well, how do we define the process? What is the process for making this happen again and again and again? The middle bit of innovation, if you like, the generating idea through to commercialization, that's really well documented. And that's where most of the training that's out there, most of the education in universities and stuff, it all focuses on that central piece. But we kind of knew from experience that there needed to be so much more than that. So we needed to look at the process for setting a strategy, for leadership, for planning, for making sure that people did have the skills they needed and so on. So we put together, let's say myself and my business partner, we sat down and we defined what good looked like from our perspective. So all the lessons that we had learned for the previous 7-8 years of doing this in a large enterprise, and what worked, what didn't work. And we documented all that down and said, there has to be something out there that already defines this. Surely we haven't come up with this. We haven't defined it. We found 2 models. So we found a few models, to be fair, but quite a few were professionalization, certification models, which were basically sold and delivered by the organization that would then check whether you were any good at it or not. So you go on a course for 6 months, you do the course, you pay them good money, and then you get a certificate at the end to say, well done, you have passed this test that we set based on the materials that we gave you. So they have a value, they certainly do have a value, but they're very much kind of designed to sell goods, to sell the services around that particular model, okay? And we bought into those, we use those as part of what we do. But we found two really that were independent and international. One's the European Foundation for Quality Management. So they had a standard which was close, if you like, and it was good, certainly predated the International Standards Organization work in this area. And then the other one, which was close to being launched, was ISO 56002 2019, the snappily titled Innovation Management Systems Guidance document. So that was a picture of what 170 countries had got together and said, yeah, this is what good looks like for managed sustainable approaches to innovation. So we moved towards looking at that. And then I got involved through the National Standards Authority of Ireland, and really got involved in finalizing that and helping to communicate and roll that one out. And that's just one of a suite of standards that's come out.
And, I can hear, some of my audience members going, oh, standards. Like, it's hard enough just to get through the basics of my organization. It's hard enough to just, convince the engineering team to sign on to this cool new piece of software, or the startup that we want to work with, et cetera, or everybody's pushed to the brink of bandwidth. Like, how am I going to force this on my folks now too? Do you confront that at all, Charlie? And like, how do you,
all the time,
like on the daily? Thank you.
Yeah.
But like, how do you overcome that? Or is there some kind of peace of mind involved?
Yeah, it's on. I try and give people sort of peace of mind on two fronts. Firstly, the standard that is out there at the moment from ISO is a guidance document. So it's not telling you have to do stuff.
Okay.
But instead, what it's saying is, if you're going to innovate, if you want innovation to be part of what you do, then here's some stuff it's really worthwhile having a look at. So that sort of says, look, this is what uncertainty is. This is what risk management is. This is how you might measure innovation. So it covers those things and doesn't say you have to have 25 KPIs for innovation, key performance indicators for innovation. What it says instead is, here are some things that you might want to measure. Start small, try a few, and add them in as and when they get embedded. So that's one side of it.
That's a very Buddhist approach, Charlie. Like the Buddhist said, like, don't believe me that any of this stuff works. Like, go ahead and try it. If you find that the Four Noble Truths, if you find that life is suffering, step one, and you'd like to overcome that suffering, just take the next right step and see if it works for you. If not, no biggie, keep looking. It's very Buddhist of you, Charlie, for an Irishman. Go ahead.
Without unknowingly Buddhist. There you go. The other debate that we would quite often get about standards is innovation's creativity. It's all it's fluffy and cloudy and it's lovely. So why would you try and standardize it? Why would you try and nail it down? It's just going to constrain creativity. I tend to counter that with again, going back to my old world, my deep technology world, where we had standards in place to manage our development approach, our software development approach, which controlled everything, controlled all the things about approaches we should take to this, that, and the other. But when it got to the creative bit, they actually cut in the code and design in the software, there was one line in the standard, in our version of the standards, that said, now go away and deliver the code according to agreed standards. So the creative bit, it never told us what language we should use, what paradigms we should use, what methodologies we should use. It just said, go away and do that bit in the way that you know how to do it best. Yeah. And I think the ISO standard for innovation is doing the same. It's saying, when you get to this point, then you want to create some ideas. It doesn't tell you which ones to use, which techniques to use. It just says, go and create them, but make sure you validate those ideas. Make sure you really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. But the creative bit, it's up to you. You do it the way that you are comfortable with and using the tools that you like.
So how do people react once they start using these standards? What do you find is on the other side of this, Charlie?
A lot of people, they are very new standards. So to find companies that have actually rolled them out in anger, if you like, is quite sort of thin and far between at the moment. But we put the standards in through the back door. If you like, we don't go in and say, what you really need to do, Susan, in order to get innovation working is to buy ISO 56002 and implement it, because people are going to roll their eyes and go, no, it's not for us at all. So what we do is we would talk through, well, okay, let's start with some ideation, because that's the fun bit. That's the nice break from the day job. Do a bit of creativity, all that sort of really exciting stuff that gets people excited. And we say, okay, so we've got ideation, we've got that nailed down, we know how to generate ideas, we know how to commercialize ideas or take them through to realization. That's great. Okay, well, let's roll this out a little bit further. So let's look at capability and some tools and techniques that you can use to make that more systematic, just incrementally, just a little bit better. Okay, so we're doing that. So we're skilling up the people in terms of what they need to do. Okay, well, those ideas, we need to make sure they're aligned to the company's vision. So let's get a strategy or a roadmap. Strategy is a scary word. It puts a lot of people off. So let's look at a roadmap which might suit what you need and just get that vision, that guiding star for where we want to try and get to. So we start talking to them about elements of strategy. Before they know it, they have a strategy, they have a roadmap for innovation. And then we're saying, well, okay, you will need to communicate this to the chief executive, CEO, or to the board. So let's get some measurements, let's get some KPIs in there. And I've hinted at this already, here's 2 or 3 that you can add into your monthly reporting packs. And if you bring those things together within the context of the organizational needs, you've actually got the core components of an innovation strategy as outlined in ISO 56002. At that point, we say, oh, by the way, now all of that stuff you've done and you've put in place, if you look over to the standard, you're actually ticking most of the boxes.
We often say on this show that I often say on this show that strategy is just a story until you execute on it.
Yeah.
And so if we could take like the fear out of the room around combining our innovation strategy along with the greater corporate strategy and the other 5 that you mentioned prior, right? Or the other 4 you mentioned prior, we're really combining a story. This is a chapter. This is a piece of the draw your own adventure.
Yeah.
Right. And so as we go along and we're creating an HR plan and a product roadmap and a revenue plan, et cetera, this innovation plan is just one more leg of this because we don't actually want the story to stop. Right. The other strategies stop at the end of the fiscal year. The innovation part of the strategy actually allows us to draw the future that the rest of us can guide all those 4 other plans alongside of. And so it's my dream that at some point, not just the block and tackle of each quarter that winds up creating the heartbeat of the company, but that the innovation strategy is one that says, wow, let's get us all the way to retirement age, right? Let's get us all the way past where we can hand this off, the lifeblood off to the next generation of. There's no conceivable way of doing that without an innovation strategy tacked to it.
Yeah, definitely. And that strategy the innovation strategy has to look so much further than the business strategy. And it has to include references to things that we can't do today.
Right.
Because otherwise we just need to work harder and we'll get there anyway. And that's the 3-year plan. That's the business plan. And the example I always give is actually, I always tend to ask people in workshops if they remember what JFK's vision was for the space program, which was, Susan, just putting you on the spot now.
Right. That we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Yeah.
By the end of the decade. Absolutely. And that's the bit that everybody remembers. By the end of the decade, we will put a man on the moon. They actually could have done that today or, on the day, because they could have fired a rocket up there, put a man on the moon and gone, ta-da, we've done it. How's it getting back? I don't know. That wasn't part of the brief. We didn't worry about that bit. So right.
That's actually a war strategy. We're just going to go in. We have no idea whether anyone will come home. That is actually a strategy for a lot of military conflict.
Well, fortunately, JFK thought a little bit beyond that, because at the end of that phrase was by the end of the decade, to put a man on the moon and bring him home safely. So the innovation bit, the bit that they couldn't do on that date, and they were going to have to work out how to do, was to bring him home safely again. But it was part of the brief, but it was the bit of the brief that they couldn't do using today's technology. So they had to work on that and establish how to bring him home safely again. And if from an innovation vision point of view, that's the bit that's going to get people going, oh, wow, that sounds good. How do I get involved? Without that bit, people go, yeah, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. And then you watch the movie Hidden Figures and you find out that it was an incredible Black woman who put a man on the moon and got him home safely. One day that vision's going to be, we'd like to see a woman on the moon and, or to Mars or what have you. And we'll get her back safely too. We'll get all of them back safely. It would be a beautiful thing. Yeah. Well, Charlie, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you for raising, I think, all of our consciousness around generating standards, thinking about how to make the innovation strategy central to the corporate planning, and just thinking about how we think about the current and the longevity standpoint of the organizations that we work with. Before I let you go, though, I want to talk about Innovate Island and how you're bringing these standards to the larger public in Ireland. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Innovate Island came out of meetings in coffee shops. I'm Belfast based. I used to be down in Dublin during my innovation role, looking for or talking to tech startups and so on, and just finding do horizon scanning, I guess is the proper term for it. Probably didn't know that at the time, but that's what I was doing. And between meetings when I was in Dublin, I started reaching out to people who were on LinkedIn and had innovation in their job title. Quite often people had been given innovation in their job title within the last year, 2 years. So it was quite a new thing. So I would just arrange to meet up with these people for a cup of coffee and a chat. And these really became therapy sessions for us, where we would meet up, share all our woes, our stories of things that just hadn't worked, all our aspirations, and say, you know, that such and such a technique, it's crap, isn't it? I can't get it to work. How do you get it to work? And they, oh, what you need to do is this, or we missed this, or we did that to it. So there were really good, safe places to ask the stupid questions, which is really important in innovation. And then we would sort of go away from those meetups, just one or two of us, and really buoyed and excited by the whole thing, and re-energized by it. And after a while, we said, we should do more of this. There is nothing in place, certainly on the island of Ireland, for people who are innovating within established businesses. Lots of stuff for startups, early stage, lots of stuff for R&D and real academic-based research and stuff going on. But there's this big gap in the middle, which is probably 98% of organizations in Ireland, or the island of Ireland, who have got nowhere to turn to. So we said, right, what we need to do is to do more of this stuff. This was early 2020. We all know what happened early 2020. Everybody
What was that,
lockdown.
Charlie? Did something happen in 2020?
Something happened. Maybe it didn't hit you over there in the States, but
yeah, here in New York, I don't think we had that. I don't know what.
Right. So we got locked down and we couldn't meet up physically. So we said, well, that's that done for. There's no way we can do this. So we thought, no, we're innovators. We must be able to find a way. So we pulled together a network on LinkedIn and connected with other people and said, look, we're going to run Friday lunchtime sessions to have a chat, to just a safe place to ask the stupid questions about how you innovate. So we've now got 350 plus members. It's completely non-commercial at the moment anyway. So 350 plus members from public sector, private sector, global industries, SMEs, academia, students, who get together on a regular basis and say chat, or we bring in guest speakers. So we've got people from all around the world coming in and sharing their innovation stories, how they apply it to the business problems that they're facing. And it's really gone from strength to strength. And this year, we're looking to expand that out and actually start to do physical get-togethers. Again, it's taken us a while, but we want to just try and replicate what we're doing. The whole idea really is that it's like, if you've ever been in an Irish pub, they have the snugs. So you have little wooden cubicles and you go in there, you get your drinks through a little hatch and you sit in there and you chat away. You can say whatever you like because nobody can hear you. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to ridicule you. So it's almost that kind of ethos that we're trying to build there, where you can go in and
that feels very uncomfortable for a New Yorker. Not a lot of judgment or ridicule. I mean, that's part of the bar scene here in New York. I'd feel a little lost without it, Charlie. I got to be honest with you.
Right. Well, sure, it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone, the kind, open, welcoming kind of scenario.
So.
It sounds lovely. Sounds lovely. Well, I hope that is a process that Innovate, you and I were chatting before the podcast. We don't want innovation to be on an island, but on this case, if it's the entire island of Ireland, we could be okay with that experience, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's hope it spreads too. So Charlie, if people want to get in touch with you to learn more about your work at Celsio or at Innovate Island, should they best contact you?
One of the benefits of having an unusual surname is that I am the only Charlie Tuxworth on LinkedIn.
Look at you.
So yeah, how about that? So if you search up Charlie Tuxworth on LinkedIn, you will be able to find me, connect with me, and see some of the stuff that we're posting about what we're doing, Innovate Island and within Celsio as well.
Fantastic. Charlie Tuxworth from Celsio, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Well, thank you, Susan.